The floating crystal spires of VR Prime caught the light of 3 distant suns, casting rainbow fractals across the grand reception hall. Princess Seraphine Valier stood motionless as her attendants adjusted the final layers of her ceremonial robes. 15 years of ritualistic training had taught her how to remain perfectly still during such preparations. Her posture impeccable, her expression a mask of serenity that betrayed nothing of the turmoil within. "Your Celestial Highness," whispered her chief attendant, a woman who had served the royal family for 3 generations. "The human envoy's ship has entered our atmosphere." Seraphine's heart constricted, though her face remained impassive. "Thank you, Ilara. You may leave me now. I require a moment of meditation before the formal introduction." The attendants bowed deeply and retreated backward from her presence, their silver slippers making no sound on the polished crystal floor. When the enormous doors closed behind them, Seraphine finally allowed her shoulders to drop, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Human," she whispered to herself, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. "Unclean. Unworthy." She moved to the balcony that overlooked the vast expanse of the capital city, its ethereal architecture seeming to float among the clouds. Beyond, the sacred harmony fields glowed with faint purple light, the source of her people's power and prosperity for millennia. And now, to preserve that prosperity, she was to be bound to a human, a creature whose ancestors had once walked in mud and filth, who lacked the genetic purity that allowed her people to channel the cosmic harmonies. Court whispers had grown louder in recent weeks. The Celestial Court was divided on this unprecedented alliance. Half believed it necessary for the continued peace between their empire and the rapidly expanding human confederation. The other half, including many of Seraphine's own relatives, saw it as an abomination, a dilution of royal bloodlines that had remained pristine for 10,000 years. "Your Highness," came a soft voice from the doorway. Seraphine turned to see High Harmonizer Celix, her mentor since childhood. The ancient man's skin was nearly translucent, his eyes holding the same purple glow as the harmony fields. "High Harmonizer," she acknowledged with a respectful inclination of her head. "Have you come to offer final wisdom before I meet this human?" Celix approached slowly, his ornate staff of office tapping gently against the floor. "I sense your distress, young one. It radiates from you like discordant notes." "How can I not be distressed?" Seraphine asked, dropping all pretense of calm. "I have spent my entire life learning our ways, purifying myself for harmonization, only to be told I must bind myself to a creature who has never known the touch of cosmic energies. And yet," Celix said, his voice gentle but firm, "the Council of Elders has determined this alliance is necessary. The humans have proven themselves resilient. Their expansion continues unabated. Without this bond, war is inevitable." "I understand my duty," Seraphine said stiffly. "I will perform it regardless of my personal feelings." Celix studied her for a long moment. "Personal feelings often have wisdom that duty cannot comprehend. Remember, Princess, harmony comes not from sameness, but from complementary differences working in concert." Before she could respond, a resonant tone echoed through the palace, signaling the arrival of the human envoy's delegation at the outer gates. Seraphine straightened her posture once more, her face resuming its practiced mask of serene dignity. "It is time," she said. The throne hall of VR Prime was an architectural marvel, its ceiling so high it disappeared into mist. Its walls formed of living crystal that hummed with subtle harmonic frequencies. Arranged in concentric rings around the central dais were the various noble houses of the Celestial Court, their members adorned in raiments that denoted their specific lineages and offices. Seraphine stood beside her father, the Celestial Sovereign, as the great doors at the far end of the hall parted. A hush fell over the assembled courtiers. Even the crystal walls seemed to hold their resonance in anticipation. The human delegation entered, and Seraphine felt her stomach tighten. Their uniforms, while clearly designed to honor Viren aesthetics, lacked the perfect symmetry her people valued. They walked with a strange, heavy gait, lacking the floating grace of the court nobles. And at their center, Envoy Marcus Vale. Seraphine's eyes widened in poorly concealed horror. The human's boots, were those leather, made from dead animals, were caked with something dark and wet. Mud. Actual earth soil from their landing site, tracked across the immaculate crystal floors of the sacred hall. With each step he took, tiny flecks of dirt fell from his footwear, leaving a trail of contamination. A collective gasp rose from the assembled courtiers. Lady Arian Taurus, Seraphine's cousin and outspoken opponent of the alliance, raised her hand to her mouth in an exaggerated gesture of disgust. Whispers rippled through the hall. "Barbarian! Unclean! How dare he desecrate the sacred hall?" The human delegation reached the base of the dais. Protocol dictated that Seraphine should descend 3 steps to meet the envoy, take his hands in the traditional greeting of equals, and welcome him to VR Prime. She could not move. The sight of those mud-caked boots had paralyzed her. All her years of training, of preparing to sacrifice her personal desires for the good of her people, seemed to evaporate in the face of this visceral reminder of human otherness. The silence stretched. The celestial sovereign cast a sideways glance at his daughter, a subtle reminder of her duty. Still, Seraphine remained frozen. Marcus Vale looked up at her, his dark eyes meeting hers directly. Another breach of protocol, as commoners were never to make eye contact with royalty before formal introduction. Yet there was no challenge in his gaze, only a calm acknowledgement of her discomfort. Recovering slightly, Seraphine spoke, her voice carrying through the hall, though she did not move from her position. "The Celestial Court of VR Prime acknowledges the presence of the Human Confederation's delegation," she said, deliberately omitting the traditional welcome phrases. "Your journey must have been arduous." Her emphasis on the last word, coupled with a pointed glance at his soiled boots, drew titters from several courtiers. Lady Arian's laugh was particularly cutting. Marcus Vale did not react to the slight. Instead, he bowed deeply, not the shallow bow of equals, but the profound obeisance of a subject to sovereign. When he straightened, his face remained composed. "Your Celestial Highness," he said, his voice surprisingly melodious for a human. "I bring greetings from Earth and all human worlds. I apologize for my appearance. Our landing site was some distance from the transport hub, and I'm afraid the recent rains made the path somewhat treacherous. Had I known it would cause distress, I would have gladly removed my footwear before entering." The simple dignity of his response made Seraphine's deliberate rudeness seem petty by comparison. She felt a flicker of shame, quickly suppressed beneath years of ingrained prejudice. "The court acknowledges your explanation," she said coolly. "You will be shown to your quarters where you may cleanse yourself before this evening's formal reception." With that, she turned and swept from the dais, deliberately bypassing the traditional greeting ceremony altogether. As she exited through the private royal passage, she heard her father smoothing over her breach of protocol, his diplomatic voice masking what she knew would be his disappointment in her behavior. In her private chambers, Seraphine paced restlessly, her ceremonial robes discarded in favor of a simpler gown. Her attendants had been dismissed. She couldn't bear their silent judgment of her public failure. A chime at her door announced the High Harmonizer. Celix entered without waiting for permission, his ancient eyes troubled. "That was poorly done, Your Highness," he said without preamble. "Did you see his boots?" Seraphine demanded. "Covered in filth in the sacred hall." "I saw a man who traveled across stars to forge peace between our peoples, who apologized graciously when confronted with unexpected cultural offense," Celix countered. "And I saw a princess who forgot that true nobility lies not in the absence of dirt, but in the presence of compassion. Seraphine turned away, unable to meet his gaze. You speak as though I betrayed some great principle. I merely expressed the feelings of the entire court. Not the entire court, Celix corrected. Many see wisdom in this alliance, including those who understand the harmony fields better than anyone. This caught Seraphine's attention. What do you mean? The fields have been weakening for generations, Celix said gravely. Our isolation has preserved our purity. Yes, but at the cost of stagnation. The human capacity for adaptation, for finding strength in diversity rather than uniformity. This may be precisely what our people need. So I am to sacrifice myself for genetic experimentation? Seraphine's voice rose. To contaminate the royal lineage on the chance it might revitalize our power? You speak of contamination, Celix said sadly. Yet the greatest pollutant is not mud on boots, but hatred in hearts. Think on this, Princess. Before this evening's reception, your behavior today has damaged our diplomatic position. Another such display could jeopardize the peace process entirely. He left her with those words. The soft closing of her chamber door, somehow more damning than any raised voice could have been. The evening reception was held in the Crystal Arboretum, where the botanical specimens of 100 worlds grew in carefully maintained harmonic balance. Seraphine had dressed with particular care, her gown incorporating elements of what her attendants assured her were human formal styles, an olive branch after her earlier discourtesy. She entered to find the envoy already present, engaged in conversation with several council elders. He had changed as well, his formal attire impeccable, boots replaced with soft-soled shoes that whispered across the floor. As protocol demanded, she made her way to him for the formal introduction that should have occurred earlier. Envoy Vale, she said, inclining her head the precise number of degrees appropriate for greeting an honored foreign dignitary. I trust your quarters are satisfactory? Marcus turned to her, offering a bow that precisely matched her own in depth. He had obviously been coached in proper etiquette. Your Celestial Highness, yes. They are most comfortable. The view of the harmony fields is particularly breathtaking. You can see them, Seraphine asked, before she could stop herself. Humans were not supposed to be able to perceive the subtle energies of the fields. A slight smile touched his lips. Not in the way your people do, I'm sure. But there is a certain shimmer to the air that is quite beautiful. Intriguing despite herself. Seraphine was about to inquire further when Lady Arian approached, her entourage of sympathizers in tow. Cousin, Arian said, her voice honey-sweet with malice. How generous of you to speak with our guest so cordially after his earlier faux pas. Marcus's expression revealed nothing, but Seraphine noticed his hands clasp behind his back, a defensive posture. Lady Arian, Seraphine acknowledged coolly. The envoy has apologized for the misunderstanding. As representatives of VR's legendary grace, we naturally accept with equanimity. Arian's eyes narrowed at the subtle rebuke. Of course, though one wonders what other misunderstandings might arise from such a fundamental difference in backgrounds. After all, humans evolved from creatures that once lived in trees, did they not? Quite a long way from the cosmic origins of our own species. Several of her companions tittered. Marcus remained silent, but Seraphine saw a muscle tighten in his jaw. I find evolutionary history fascinating, Seraphine said, surprising herself with her own response. The capacity to rise from humble beginnings to reach for the stars speaks to a remarkable resilience, does it not? One might even say it demonstrates a harmony with universal principles of growth and transformation. Lady Arian's smile froze. Marcus glanced at Seraphine, a flicker of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. Indeed, Your Highness. Arian recovered smoothly. Though some transformations are more elevated than others. Speaking of which, I understand you and the envoy will be working together on the Unity ceremony preparations. How unprecedented. The Council of Elders believes our direct cooperation will symbolize the alliance we seek to forge. Seraphine replied, "We begin tomorrow." "How fascinating," Arian said. "I look forward to hearing of your progress. Do be careful with the sacred implements. Envoy Vale. Some of them are quite sensitive to discordant energies." With that parting barb, she glided away, her followers in her wake like the train of a malevolent gown. "Your cousin seems concerned for the success of our venture," Marcus observed dryly when they were alone. "Lady Arian represents those who believe our traditions should remain unchanging," Seraphine said diplomatically, though she was still unsettled by her own impulse to defend him. "Change is difficult for many of our people, as it is for humans," Marcus replied. "But without change, there is no growth. Without challenge, no strength." Seraphine studied him more carefully. His features were not unpleasant, she decided reluctantly. His skin had a warmth to it that the alabaster complexions of her people lacked, and his eyes held an intensity that spoke of deep thought rather than the vacant politeness she was accustomed to from courtiers. "You surprise me, Envoy Vale," she admitted. "Your response to adversity is more measured than I would have expected." "You mean I don't react with human temper?" His smile held no rancor. "Diplomats are chosen for their ability to understand perspectives beyond their own. Your Highness, I came here knowing I would face skepticism, even hostility. My goal is not to take offense, but to build bridges." Before Seraphine could respond, the celestial sovereign approached, signaling the beginning of the formal toasts. As she took her place beside her father, Seraphine found her thoughts unexpectedly preoccupied with the human envoy's words. Build bridges. Not between their worlds. That was mere diplomacy, but between their fundamentally different ways of being. Was such a thing truly possible? Or was Lady Arian right, that some gulfs were too vast to span? The ceremonial chamber was ancient, its walls inscribed with the complete history of VR Prime in flowing script that seemed to move when viewed from different angles. Here, over the course of 7 days, Seraphine and Marcus would prepare the unity ritual that would form the centerpiece of their diplomatic marriage. Seraphine arrived precisely on time, wearing the simple white robes, appropriate for ritual preparation. She found Marcus already present, similarly attired in garments provided by the palace tailors. He was studying the historical inscriptions with evident fascination. "This is remarkable," he said as she entered. "The script seems alive somehow." "It is responsive to harmonic frequencies," Seraphine explained, setting her ceremonial case on the central table. "The letters adjust their position based on the emotional resonance of the viewer. No two people see exactly the same history." "What does it show you?" Marcus asked. Seraphine paused, unused to such direct personal questions. "I see. The founding of the first harmony field. The great accord between the ancient houses. The celestial ascension of my ancestor, Seraphina the Wise. All moments of unity and achievement," Marcus observed. "Interesting. And what do you see?" she asked, curious despite herself. "Battles, mostly," he admitted. "Moments of crisis and resolution. A great plague that was overcome. A schism in your ruling council that was healed by compromise." Seraphine frowned. "Those are darker chapters in our history. But also moments of strength and resilience," Marcus pointed out. "Perhaps the walls show us what we need to understand, rather than simply what we wish to see." It was a disquieting thought. Seraphine moved to the table, opening her case to reveal an assortment of crystalline implements. "We should begin. The first stage of preparation involves calibrating the ceremonial resonators to our combined bioenergetic signatures." Marcus approached cautiously. "I've been briefed on the theory, but I'm afraid the practice is quite foreign to me. Will my human nature interfere with the process?" That remains to be seen, Seraphine said, more stiffly than she'd intended. The resonators have never been calibrated to a non-Viaran before. She removed a delicate crystal wand from the case and held it between her palms. Immediately, it began to glow with soft purple light, responding to her innate connection to the harmony fields. "Now you must hold it," she instructed, extending the wand toward Marcus. He hesitated. "Will it harm me if I'm incompatible?" "No," Seraphine assured him. "At worst, it simply won't respond." Carefully, Marcus took the wand. The purple glow dimmed, but didn't extinguish completely. Instead, it seemed to pulse, as if searching for something. "Interesting," Seraphine murmured. "It recognizes something in you, though the connection is weak. Try focusing your thoughts on harmony, on balance between opposing forces." Marcus closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. The wand's glow stabilized, then slowly began to shift from purple toward blue. "That's—" Seraphine broke off, astonished. "That's unprecedented. The resonator is adapting to you, rather than you conforming to it." "Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked, opening his eyes to observe the now blue-violet light emanating from the wand. "It's neither. Simply unexpected." Seraphine reached out, placing her hands over his around the wand. "Now, we attempt the first harmonization. Our energies should—" The moment their skin touched, a surge of sensation shot up Seraphine's arms. The wand flared with brilliant light, then stabilized into a perfect violet-blue equilibrium. Neither purely her purple nor his blue, but a perfect blend. "Merge," she finished weakly, staring at the wand in amazement. "I felt that," Marcus said quietly. "Like an electric current, but pleasant." Seraphine withdrew her hands quickly, uncomfortable with both the unexpected success and the unfamiliar sensation of human skin against hers. It had been warmer than she expected, not cold and clammy as she'd been led to believe humans would feel. "We should proceed to the next implement," she said briskly, trying to regain her composure. For the next several hours, they worked through the ritual preparations, each step revealing new surprises. The ceremonial implements responded to Marcus in ways Seraphine had never seen before, creating harmonies that were technically perfect, yet utterly novel. By midday, they had completed the first phase of preparations, work that should have taken until evening. Seraphine was both impressed and disturbed by the efficiency of their cooperation. "We've made remarkable progress," Marcus observed as they paused for refreshment. "Your guidance has been invaluable." Seraphine inclined her head in acknowledgement of the compliment. "Your adaptability has facilitated the process." "A diplomatic way of saying I'm not as hopelessly disharmonious as you feared," Marcus said with a smile that held no malice. Seraphine felt her cheeks warm slightly. "I may have harbored certain preconceptions." "As did I," Marcus admitted. "I was told Viaran royalty were cold, aloof beings incapable of direct communication. Yet here you are, managing quite well without intermediaries or elaborate circumlocutions." "You find me direct?" Seraphine was genuinely surprised. In court, she was often chided for being too reserved. "Compared to some of your counselors, refreshingly so." His smile widened, and Seraphine noticed for the first time that his eyes crinkled at the corners when he was genuinely amused. Before she could respond, the chamber door burst open. Lady Arian entered, flanked by 2 members of her house. "Cousin," Arian said, her voice dripping with false concern. "The council was growing worried when you didn't emerge for the midday recess. I volunteered to ensure all was, well." Her gaze moved pointedly between Seraphine and Marcus, lingering on their proximity to each other at the refreshment table. "As you can see, we are making excellent progress," Seraphine replied coolly. "The resonators have responded well to our combined efforts." Arian approached the table, examining the implements with a critical eye. Indeed, how fascinating that human energy could be compatible with our sacred artifacts. Though I wonder. She reached out toward one of the calibrated crystals. Seraphine stepped forward in alarm. Touching a calibrated resonator could disrupt its attunement. But before she could intervene, Marcus moved with surprising speed, his hand gently intercepting Arian's before she could make contact. "Forgive me, Lady Arian," he said smoothly, withdrawing his hand the instant she pulled back. But High Harmonizer Celix was most explicit about the dangers of disrupting the calibration process once begun. Arian's face flushed with anger at being touched by a human. "How dare you lay hands on a member of House Taurus?" "Cousin," Seraphine interjected. The envoy prevented a potentially dangerous disruption to the ritual preparations. His action was appropriate given the circumstances. "Appropriate," Arian hissed. "For a human to touch a noble of VR Prime? The very notion is absurd. I shall bring this before the council immediately." "You are welcome to do so," Seraphine said with a calmness she didn't entirely feel. "I will, of course, provide my full account of the incident, including your attempt to interfere with the ceremonial implements, despite clear protocols against such actions." Arian's eyes narrowed. "You take his side against your own blood?" "I take the side of successful diplomatic relations," Seraphine replied. "As is my duty." For a moment, Arian seemed ready to escalate the confrontation further. Then, with visible effort, she composed herself. "Of course, cousin. Duty above all. I look forward to tomorrow's progress report to the council." With a final venomous glance at Marcus, she swept from the chamber, her followers close behind. When the door closed, Seraphine released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was unfortunate." "She seems determined to find fault with our efforts," Marcus observed. "Is her opposition personal or political?" "Both." "I suspect," Seraphine admitted. "House Taurus has long advocated for isolationist policies. They believe any dilution of Viren purity threatens our connection to the harmony fields. And Arian specifically." "Yes?" Seraphine hesitated, then decided honesty might be valuable. "There was once discussion of a political marriage between myself and her brother. The arrangement was deemed less advantageous than the human alliance. She has not forgotten this." "Ah," Marcus nodded. "Rejected suitors are a universal diplomatic complication. It seems." Despite the tension of the moment, Seraphine found herself smiling slightly at his dry observation. "Indeed. Though in this case, it's a rejected family alliance rather than a spurned romance. The principle remains the same. Pride wounded, revenge sought." Marcus looked thoughtful. "We should be prepared for further interference." "We?" Seraphine raised an eyebrow. "We are partners in this endeavor, are we not?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Our success or failure affects both our peoples." "Partners." The word should have offended her. Yet after the morning's unexpected harmony, she couldn't dismiss it outright. "We should continue with the preparations," she said, instead of answering directly. "There is still much to accomplish." Marcus nodded, respecting her deflection. As they returned to work, Seraphine found herself increasingly conscious of his movements, his expressions, the careful precision with which he handled the ceremonial implements. For a human, he showed remarkable sensitivity to the subtle energies they were manipulating. By day's end, they had completed nearly 3 days' worth of preparatory work. As they secured the implements for the night, Seraphine found herself reluctant to end their collaboration. "You've exceeded expectations. Envoy Vale," she said formally, as they prepared to depart. "Marcus," he said quietly, "when we're working together like this, I'd be honored if you used my given name." Protocol dictated she refuse such familiarity. Instead, Seraphine heard herself say, "Very well, Marcus, until tomorrow." Then, His smile was like sunrise over the harmony fields, warm, illuminating, full of promise. Until tomorrow, Seraphine. She should have corrected him, insisted on her formal title. She didn't. The days that followed established a rhythm of collaboration that Seraphine found increasingly comfortable. Each morning they met in the ceremonial chamber, worked through the complex preparations for the unity ritual, and found themselves completing tasks with unexpected efficiency and harmony. Lady Arian had indeed brought the incident before the council, but with both Seraphine and High Harmonizer Celix supporting Marcus's account, the matter was dismissed as a misunderstanding. Arian's frustration was palpable, but for the moment, she had retreated to less direct forms of opposition. On the fourth day, as they worked on aligning the central harmony crystal that would form the heart of their ceremony, Marcus asked a question that caught Seraphine off guard. "Why do your people consider humans unclean?" Her hands stilled on the crystal. "That is a complex cultural matter." "I understand if it's uncomfortable to discuss," Marcus said. "But if we're to create genuine harmony between our peoples, understanding the root of such perceptions seems important." Seraphine considered deflecting again, then decided that his point was valid. "It stems from our origin myths," she explained. "The ancient texts say that Viarans were born of cosmic energy, our bodies formed from the pure resonance of stars. Humans, by contrast, evolved from earthbound creatures, shaped by soil and water rather than celestial forces. Earth and water are also part of the cosmos," Marcus observed. "Different elements, but no less essential to the universal balance. A philosophical perspective, not traditionally embraced by my people," Seraphine admitted. "We have long equated elevation, both literal and figurative, with purity. Our cities float above planetary surfaces. Our ceremonies emphasize ascending harmonies. Physical contact with soil is considered regressive. Hence your reaction to my muddy boots." Marcus nodded in understanding. "I truly am sorry for that offense. Had I understood the depth of the taboo, I would have removed them regardless of protocol." The sincerity in his voice touched something in Seraphine. "You couldn't have known. And I—" She hesitated, then continued. "I reacted poorly. My behavior was beneath the dignity of my position." "Cultural misunderstandings happen on both sides," Marcus said gently. "What matters is our willingness to learn from them." Their eyes met over the glowing crystal between them, and Seraphine felt again that strange harmonic resonance that seemed to occur whenever they worked closely together. It wasn't unpleasant, quite the contrary, but it was unsettling in its unfamiliarity. A chime sounded, indicating the arrival of their midday meal. The moment broken. Seraphine moved to receive the attendant at the door. When she returned with the tray, she found Marcus examining one of the historical inscriptions again, his expression troubled. "What do you see today?" she asked, setting the tray on a side table. He glanced at her, then back to the wall. "A great storm! Damage to the harmony fields. Suffering." Seraphine moved to stand beside him, studying the same section of wall. To her eyes, it showed the celestial convergence, a time of unprecedented prosperity and advancement. "When did this storm occur?" she asked. "According to the date inscriptions, about 300 years ago," Marcus replied. "It says the fields were weakened for nearly a decade afterward." Seraphine frowned. "I know of no such event in our history." "Perhaps it's metaphorical," Marcus suggested. "Or perhaps some chapters of history are remembered differently by different houses." It was a disquieting thought. Viaran historical records were supposed to be absolute, unchanging. The idea that perspective might alter even their most sacred texts was dangerously close to certain philosophical heresies that had been suppressed generations ago. "We should eat," she said, deliberately changing the subject. "The crystal alignments this afternoon will require significant energy." Marcus accepted the deflection gracefully, moving to join her at the refreshment table. As they ate, their conversation turned to lighter topics: the architectural differences between human and VRN settlements, the varieties of art forms unique to each culture, the strange foods that each found appealing. Seraphine was surprised to find herself laughing at his description of a human dessert called ice cream that would be considered barbarically cold by VRN standards. "You must try it someday," Marcus insisted. "There's nothing quite like the contrast of cold cream and warm sauce." "Perhaps," Seraphine said, surprising herself with the admission that she might someday consume a human food. "Though I suspect I would prefer it at least partially warmed." "A diplomatic compromise," Marcus smiled. "The foundation of successful interspecies relations." Their afternoon work proceeded smoothly, until an unexpected fluctuation in the harmony fields caused one of the crystals to pulse erratically. Seraphine moved quickly to stabilize it, but as she reached for the resonator, her foot caught on the edge of a floor tile. She stumbled forward, losing her balance. Marcus reacted instantly, one arm catching her around the waist while his other hand shot out to steady the wobbling crystal. For a moment, they were frozen in a tableau of near disaster, Seraphine half fallen against his chest, his arm supporting her weight, their free hands both touching the now stabilized resonator. Through the point of contact, where his arm encircled her waist, Seraphine felt a surge of that same harmonic resonance they'd experienced when calibrating the wand, but stronger now, more defined. It wasn't merely pleasant, it was exhilarating, as though some dormant part of her was awakening to a complementary energy she hadn't known existed. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked, his voice closer to her ear than any human's had ever been. Seraphine straightened quickly, pulling away from his support though her legs felt unexpectedly weak. "Yes, thank you for your assistance." His eyes searched hers, and she knew he had felt it too, that strange resonance between them. "The crystal is stable now," he said, withdrawing his hand from the resonator. "Though that was an unusual fluctuation in the field." "Yes," Seraphine agreed, grateful for the return to technical matters. "Disturbances in the harmony fields have become more frequent in recent years. Another reason the Council seeks alliance with humanity. Your technological expertise might help us understand the phenomenon." "Has anyone investigated correlation with solar activity, or tectonic movements in the planetary core?" Marcus asked, his scientific mind immediately engaging with the problem. "Some research has been conducted, but without conclusive results," Seraphine admitted. "The fields have always been semi-mystical in nature, responsive to consciousness as much as physical forces." "Fascinating," Marcus murmured. "The intersection of measurable energy and subjective experience. We have similar phenomena in human consciousness studies, though nothing so dramatically manifested as your harmony fields." They spent the remainder of the afternoon completing the crystal alignments, both carefully maintaining a professional distance after the unexpected intimacy of their contact. Yet, Seraphine found her awareness of Marcus heightened, as though the brief connection had attuned her senses to his presence in a new way. When they parted for the evening, his "until tomorrow," Seraphine, seemed to carry new layers of meaning that both intrigued and frightened her. In her chambers that night, Seraphine found herself unable to meditate properly, her thoughts continually returning to the sensation of Marcus's arm around her waist, the startling warmth of his body against hers, the harmonic resonance that had flowed between them. What did it mean that a human, a being supposedly discordant with VRN energies, could create such perfect harmony with her? Was it merely an anomaly, or did it suggest that the ancient teachings about human impurity might be fundamentally flawed? Either possibility was disturbing in its implications. A soft chime interrupted her troubled thoughts. "Enter," she called, expecting one of her attendants. Instead, High Harmonizer Celix appeared, his ancient face grave. "Princess, I must speak with you urgently." Seraphine rose, instantly alert. What has happened? The Council has received intelligence that House Taurus may be planning to disrupt the Unity ceremony, Celix said without preamble. Lady Arian has been meeting with representatives of the most conservative houses, and there are rumors of a ritual device being constructed in secret. A device to what purpose? We believe they may attempt to create deliberate disharmony during the ceremony, to make it appear that the human alliance is fundamentally incompatible with our cosmic energies. Seraphine felt cold dread settle in her stomach. Such an action could be dangerous beyond mere political sabotage. Disharmony on that scale, introduced during a major ritual, could damage the fields themselves. Celix finished gravely. Yes, the Sovereign has ordered increased security for the ceremony, but we must be vigilant. Any unusual components or unexpected participants must be investigated immediately. Does Envoy Vale know of this threat? Not yet. The Sovereign thought it best to inform you first, as you have been working most closely with him. Seraphine nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of concern she felt for Marcus's safety. I will alert him tomorrow. We have nearly completed the preparations. Only the final harmonization remains. Be careful, Princess, Celix warned. Lady Arian is ambitious and believes deeply in her cause. She will not hesitate to sacrifice much for what she considers the greater good of VR Prime. After Celix departed, Seraphine found her meditation even more impossible. The threat to the ceremony was serious enough, but she found herself equally disturbed by her personal reaction, her immediate concern for Marcus rather than for the diplomatic implications. In less than a week, he had somehow breached her carefully constructed barriers, making her question beliefs she had held her entire life. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt an unfamiliar sensation that took her some time to identify. Hope. Hope that perhaps the gulf between their peoples was not as unbridgeable as she had been taught. Hope that the harmony she felt when working with Marcus might extend beyond their personal interaction to a broader reconciliation between their species. With that tentative hope warming her troubled thoughts, Seraphine finally drifted into uneasy sleep. The final day of preparations dawned clear and brilliant. The three suns of the VR system aligned in a configuration that occurred only once per decade. One reason this particular date had been chosen for the ceremony. The harmony fields glowed with unusual intensity, visible even to non-Vieran eyes, as a subtle aurora in the sky above the floating city. Seraphine arrived at the ceremonial chamber to find Marcus already present, studying the final configuration of crystals with a scientist's careful attention to detail. Good morning, he greeted her, then frowned slightly as he noticed her expression. Something's wrong. She closed the door carefully before speaking. There is a potential threat to the ceremony. House Taurus may attempt to sabotage the ritual harmonization. Marcus's expression grew serious. Political opposition I expected, but active sabotage. The stakes are higher than you might realize, Seraphine explained. A disruption of the harmonic fields during a major ceremony could have catastrophic consequences, not merely diplomatic but physical. The fields sustain our civilization in ways even we don't fully understand. What can we do to prevent this? Security has been increased, but we must be vigilant ourselves. The final preparation we complete today, the heart crystal attunement, is particularly vulnerable to interference. Marcus nodded, his eyes moving to the central crystal that would form the focal point of tomorrow's ceremony. Then we should proceed with extra caution. If you'll guide me, I'll follow your lead exactly. They worked with meticulous care throughout the morning, Seraphine explaining each step in greater detail than before, Marcus following her instructions with perfect precision. By midday, they had completed all the preliminary alignments for the heart crystal attunement. Now comes the most delicate part, Seraphine said as they stood before the floating crystal. We must synchronize our bioenergetic signatures completely and transfer that perfect harmony into the crystal core. How is that accomplished? Marcus asked. Traditionally, through the ritual of the unified hands, Seraphine explained. We will sit facing each other, with the crystal between us, and join our hands around it. Then we focus our consciousness on creating perfect resonance between our energies. She could see a flicker of concern cross his face. Given what happened yesterday when we accidentally touched. Yes, Seraphine acknowledged. The resonance between us seems unusually strong. It will make the attunement more powerful, but also more intense. Will it be dangerous? Not physically. No. But it will create a deeper connection than is usually experienced in diplomatic rituals. Traditionally, this level of attunement is reserved for those who have already established significant harmonic compatibility. I see, Marcus said quietly. If you prefer to modify the ritual. No, Seraphine interrupted with surprising firmness. The traditional method will produce the strongest attunement, which may be crucial if there is an attempt at sabotage tomorrow. We should proceed as planned. They seated themselves on ceremonial cushions, the heart crystal floating at eye level between them. Seraphine extended her hands, palms up, on either side of the crystal. Place your hands over mine, she instructed. Palms down, fingers aligned with mine but not quite touching. We begin with proximity, then gradually increase contact as the resonance builds. Marcus positioned his hands as directed, hovering a hair's breadth above hers. Even without direct contact, Seraphine could feel the energy between them, like the charged air before a lightning strike. Now we focus on harmony, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Visualize your energy as a blue light, mine as purple. See them flowing between us, gradually blending into violet where they meet. She closed her eyes, focusing on the visualization, feeling the familiar purple energy of her connection to the harmony fields. Through her enhanced awareness, she could sense Marcus doing the same, his energy indeed manifesting as a cool blue radiance in her mind's eye. Slowly, cautiously, their energies began to reach toward each other, tendrils of blue and purple extending across the space between them. Where they touched, violet light bloomed, exactly as she had described. Lower your hands, Seraphine whispered. Just enough to make contact. As their fingertips touched, the resonance between them surged. Seraphine gasped at the intensity, her eyes flying open to find Marcus similarly affected, his dark eyes wide with wonder. Is this normal? He managed to ask, his voice strained. No, she admitted. This is exceptional. The crystal between them had begun to pulse with violet light, responding to their combined energy, following the ritual requirements. Seraphine slowly turned her hands to clasp his properly, their fingers intertwining on either side of the floating crystal. The moment their hands fully joined, the resonance between them exploded into something transcendent. Seraphine felt as though she could sense every cell in Marcus's body, every thought in his mind, not with invasive clarity, but as a harmonious presence complementing her own consciousness. Through the connection, she caught glimpses of his life, a childhood spent looking up at stars, years of rigorous diplomatic training, his first voyage to an alien world, the mixture of trepidation and hope he'd felt upon being chosen for this mission to VR Prime, and beneath it all, his fundamental nature, compassionate, curious, courageous in the face of the unknown. The heart crystal blazed with violet light, drawing their combined energy into its structure, encoding their unique resonance pattern into its crystalline matrix. When the attunement reached its crescendo, the crystal emitted a pure, bell-like tone that reverberated through the chamber. Slowly, reluctantly, Seraphine released Marcus's hands. The intense connection faded, though she could still feel an echo of it humming between them like a plucked string. That was, Marcus began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. Yes, Seraphine agreed softly. It was. They sat in silence for several moments, both processing the profound experience they had shared. The heart crystal continued to pulse gently between them, now perfectly attuned to their combined energy signature. I saw. Marcus hesitated. That is, I felt aspects of your consciousness. As I did yours, Seraphine acknowledged. It is an effect of deep harmonic resonance, though rarely so vivid between diplomatic partners. You've experienced this before? There was a note in his voice she couldn't quite identify. A lesser version, yes, during ritual training, she explained, but never with this level of clarity or compatibility. Marcus studied her face. What does it mean? For our peoples? For the ceremony? It means the unity ritual tomorrow will be exceptionally powerful, Seraphine said, focusing on the practical implications rather than the personal ones that troubled her. Our resonance pattern, encoded in the heart crystal, will create a harmonic template that could facilitate understanding between humans and Viarans for generations. And for us? Marcus asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Laden with implications, Seraphine wasn't prepared to confront. We have completed our preparations successfully, she said instead, rising gracefully to her feet. You should rest before tomorrow's ceremony. It will be demanding. Marcus stood as well, accepting her deflection with a slight nod. Until tomorrow. Then, until tomorrow, she echoed, watching as he departed the chamber. When she was alone, Seraphine approached the heart crystal, studying the violet light that pulsed within it, neither her purple nor his blue, but something new created from their union. The sight filled her with a complex mixture of emotions: wonder at the unexpected harmony, fear of what it might mean for her carefully ordered understanding of the universe, and beneath it all, a growing warmth whenever she thought of Marcus. Not Envoy Vale, the human diplomat, but Marcus, the man whose consciousness had touched hers so profoundly. She was still standing there, lost in thought, when a palace attendant arrived with an urgent summons from the celestial sovereign. Composing herself, Seraphine secured the heart crystal in its ceremonial case and hurried to her father's private council chamber. She found him in conference with High Harmonizer Celix and the chief of palace security. Father, she said, bowing formally as she entered. You summoned me? The celestial sovereign looked up, his ageless face grave. Daughter, our security forces have intercepted communications confirming that House Taurus intends to disrupt the ceremony tomorrow. Lady Arian herself will lead the effort. Have they been apprehended? Seraphine asked. No, the security chief replied. The communications were encrypted, and we have not been able to identify all participants. We know only that they plan to introduce a discordant element at the moment of final harmonization. We could postpone the ceremony, Celix suggested. Allow time to investigate further. The sovereign shook his head. The diplomatic implications would be severe. The human delegation would perceive it as hesitation on our part, perhaps even a deliberate slight. No. The ceremony must proceed as scheduled. Then we must be prepared for interference, Seraphine said. The heart crystal attunement was exceptionally strong. If we maintain focus on that resonance pattern, we should be able to counteract moderate discordance. Celix looked at her sharply. Exceptionally strong? In what way? Seraphine hesitated, uncertain how to explain the profound connection she had experienced with Marcus. The human envoy shows unusual sensitivity to harmonic energies. Our combined resonance created a more powerful attunement than anticipated. Interesting, Celix murmured. Perhaps this is why the ancient texts speak of complementary energies rather than identical ones. Different frequencies, properly aligned, can create stronger harmonies than similar ones. Regardless of the reason, the sovereign interjected, this may work to our advantage. Security will be doubled, particularly around the ceremonial dais. Seraphine, you and Envoy Vale must be vigilant for any sign of interference during the ritual. Yes, Father, Seraphine bowed again. I will alert him to be prepared. No, the sovereign said firmly. The human delegation must not be informed of the specific threat. It would create diplomatic complications we cannot afford. Simply ensure that the envoy understands the importance of maintaining focus during the ceremony. Seraphine wanted to protest. Keeping Marcus in ignorance of the danger seemed not only unfair, but potentially counterproductive. Yet duty prevailed, as it always had in her life. As you command, Father. That evening, as final preparations for the ceremony were underway throughout the palace, Seraphine found herself drawn to the private royal garden, the floating terraces, suspended at the very edge of the city, offered unparalleled views of the harmony fields stretching across the planet's surface far below. She stood at the crystalline railing, watching the purple glow of the fields intensify as night fell. Tomorrow, those same fields would bear witness to a union unprecedented in Vieran history, and, if House Taurus succeeded in their sabotage, perhaps to a diplomatic disaster that could lead to interstellar conflict. Beautiful, aren't they? Seraphine turned to find Marcus, approaching along the garden path, his eyes on the glowing fields below. In the purple light, his features seemed somehow both alien and familiar, as though she were seeing him clearly for the first time. Yes, she agreed. Though they have been fading for generations. Another reason the Council seeks alliance with humanity. Marcus joined her at the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. Your High Harmonizer mentioned this. The fields are weakening. Slowly, yes. Our scientists believe it may be due to our isolation, that the fields require new input, new energy patterns to remain vibrant. Seraphine hesitated, then added, After today's attunement, I wonder if they might be right. The resonance between us was revitalizing, in a way I've never experienced with my own people. I felt it too, Marcus said quietly. Like discovering a part of myself I never knew was missing. Their eyes met, and Seraphine felt again that pull between them. A subtle harmonic attraction that had nothing to do with diplomacy or duty. Marcus, she began, uncertain what she wanted to say but feeling compelled to speak. Tomorrow. Your Highness, a voice interrupted. They turned to see one of Seraphine's attendants approaching rapidly. Forgive the intrusion, but your presence is required for the final fitting of your ceremonial attire. Seraphine suppressed a sigh of frustration. Of course, I will come at once. As the attendant withdrew to a respectful distance, Seraphine turned back to Marcus. I must go. The ceremony tomorrow will be perfect, he finished for her, his voice carrying a certainty she wished she could share. We've prepared well. She wanted to warn him of the threat, to tell him to be vigilant, but her father's command held her silent. Instead, she said only, Focus on our resonance. No matter what occurs, the harmony we created today, hold to that. He seemed to sense the weight behind her words, his expression growing serious. I will. I promise. With a formal inclination of her head that felt suddenly insufficient after the intimacy they had shared. Seraphine departed, leaving Marcus alone in the purple twilight of the royal garden. The day of the Unity ceremony dawned with all three suns of the VR system perfectly aligned, casting triple shadows across the floating city. Seraphine stood motionless as her attendants dressed her in the ceremonial robes of state, layer upon layer of shimmering fabric that caught and refracted light like living crystal. Her thoughts, however, were far from the elaborate costuming ritual. Security reports indicated no unusual activity from House Taurus, which only increased her anxiety. Lady Arian was not one to abandon a plan once set in motion, which meant the sabotage attempt was still coming. They simply hadn't detected it yet. When her attendants had finished, Seraphine studied her reflection in the mirror. The formal regalia transformed her into a living embodiment of Viren majesty, remote, perfect, untouchable. Yet beneath the elaborate exterior, she felt more conflicted than ever, torn between duty to her people and the unexpected connection she had formed with a human. High Harmonizer Celix arrived to escort her to the ceremony. "You look troubled, Princess," he observed as they walked through the private royal corridors. "I am concerned about House Taurus," she admitted, "and about keeping Envoy Vale uninformed of the threat." "Your father believes it best," Celix reminded her. "And perhaps he is right. The envoy might feel obligated to inform his delegation, which could lead to diplomatic complications. Or he might be better prepared to help counter the sabotage," Seraphine countered. "The resonance between us is stronger when we work in conscious harmony." Celix studied her with ancient, knowing eyes. "The connection you formed with the human troubles you." "It wasn't a question." Seraphine looked away. "It contradicts everything I've been taught about humans, about purity and harmony." "Perhaps what you were taught was incomplete," Celix suggested gently. "The universe rarely conforms perfectly to our attempts to categorize it. True wisdom lies in recognizing when our understanding must expand to accommodate new truths." Before she could respond, they reached the antechamber of the great ceremonial hall. Through the crystal doors, Seraphine could see thousands of spectators, Viren nobles, human diplomats, representatives from allied worlds, all gathered to witness the unprecedented alliance. And somewhere among them, Lady Arian and her conspirators, waiting to strike. "It is time," Celix said softly. "Remember your training, Princess. Focus on the harmony, not the discord." The crystal doors swung open. A hush fell over the assembled crowd as Seraphine glided forward, every step measured, every movement precise. She ascended the ceremonial dais where the celestial sovereign already stood, taking her place at his right hand. From the opposite side of the hall, the human delegation approached. At their center walked Marcus, clad in formal attire that blended elements of human and Viren design. Their eyes met across the vast space, and even at this distance, Seraphine felt the resonance between them pulse in response. As protocol dictated, they reached the dais simultaneously. The celestial sovereign raised his hands, and the entire hall fell silent. "Today," his voice rang out, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the crystal chamber, "we witness the beginning of a new harmony between our peoples. The cosmic energies that have guided VR Prime since its founding now welcome the unique resonance of humanity into our sacred pattern." He gestured, and attendants brought forth the heart crystal, now pulsing with the violet light of Seraphine and Marcus's combined energy signature. It was placed on a pedestal at the center of the dais, between the positions where they would stand for the ritual. "Princess Seraphine Valyre of House VR, do you come freely to this harmonization?" the sovereign intoned. "I come in service to cosmic harmony," Seraphine responded, the traditional words feeling strange in her mouth after the genuine connection she had experienced with Marcus. "Envoy Marcus Vale of Earth, do you come freely to this harmonization?" "I come seeking understanding between our peoples," Marcus replied, the slight variation in the traditional response causing a murmur among the Viren nobles. The celestial sovereign nodded, accepting both responses. "Then, let the ritual of unity commence." They took their positions on either side of the heart crystal. As rehearsed, they each extended one hand, palm up, beside the floating crystal. Seraphine scanned the crowd as subtly as she could, searching for any sign of Lady Arian or unusual movement among the spectators. The vast hall made it impossible to monitor everyone, but security forces were stationed throughout, watchful for disturbances. The first phase of the ritual began with a harmonization of sound, a chorus of Viren voices producing tones that resonated with the crystal's frequency. The heart crystal's glow intensified, responding to the harmonic vibrations. Next came the light harmonization, as precisely arranged crystals around the perimeter of the hall refracted the triple sunlight into patterns that danced across the dais. The heart crystal absorbed these patterns, its violet light taking on subtle variations of color. Finally, it was time for the culmination, the bioenergetic harmonization that would cement the alliance between their peoples. Following the ritual choreography, Seraphine and Marcus each raised their free hand and slowly brought both hands together around the crystal, their fingers interlacing as they had during the attunement. The moment their hands joined, the resonance between them surged. The heart crystal blazed with violet light, pulsing in time with their synchronized energies. Seraphine felt the now familiar sense of connection with Marcus, his consciousness brushing against hers, his energy complementing her own in perfect harmony. Through their joined hands, she sensed his wonder at the experience, his genuine desire for understanding between their peoples, and beneath it all, something warmer, more personal, directed at her specifically. The realization sent a surge of answering warmth through her own energy pattern. The heart crystal responded, its light expanding outward in concentric rings that washed over the assembled spectators. Gasps of amazement rose from the crowd as humans and VRNs alike felt the first tentative touch of shared harmonic resonance. It was working better than anyone had anticipated. The unity ritual was creating genuine connection between their species, a template for understanding that could transform relations between their peoples. Then, Seraphine saw it, a flash of movement at the edge of the crowd. Lady Arian, slipping something from beneath her ceremonial robes, a small device glowing with an ominous red light that clashed with the violet harmony filling the hall. Seraphine's eyes widened in alarm. She couldn't break the ritual to alert security. The harmonic field was at its most vulnerable during the culmination phase. Any sudden disruption from the ritual participants could cause a cascading failure that would be just as damaging as Arian's sabotage. Through their connection, Marcus sensed her distress. His eyes questioned, his energy pattern rippling with concern. "Or, danger!" she projected through their resonance, unsure if such direct communication was even possible, but desperate to warn him. Sabotage. His eyes widened slightly. He had received her warning, at least in part. His gaze followed hers, to where Lady Arian was now holding the device aloft, its red glow intensifying. Without breaking his physical connection to Seraphine or the crystal, Marcus shifted his stance slightly, placing his body between the heart crystal and Arian's position. The movement was subtle but deliberate. He was shielding the focus of the ritual with his own body. Arian's device emitted a sudden pulse of discordant energy. It slammed into the harmonic field like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples of disruption through the carefully constructed resonance pattern. Several VRN nobles cried out in pain as the disharmony touched them, and even some humans winced at the psychic dissonance. Seraphine felt the attack as a jarring note in the symphony she and Marcus had created. The heart crystal flickered, its violet light wavering toward red. "Focus," Marcus whispered, his fingers tightening around hers. "Our resonance. Remember." Drawing on his strength, Seraphine pushed back against the discordance, pouring her energy into their shared connection. The heart crystal stabilized momentarily, then flickered again as Arian's device pulsed a second time, stronger than before. Around the hall, security forces were converging on Lady Arian, but they moved slowly, hampered by the disharmonic waves emanating from her device. She raised it higher, her face twisted with zealous determination. "For the purity of VR Prime," she shouted, activating the device's final sequence. A beam of concentrated disharmonic energy shot directly at the heart crystal. Marcus, seeing it coming, did the unthinkable. He released the crystal and stepped fully into the path of the beam, shielding both Seraphine and the heart crystal with his body. The beam struck him square in the chest. He staggered but remained standing, his face contorted in pain as the disharmonic energy tore through him. "Marcus!" Seraphine cried out, horror and something deeper, more personal, eclipsing her focus on the ritual. He turned to her, his eyes filled with agony, but also determination. "Don't break the connection," he gasped. "Finish the ritual." Even as he spoke, his knees buckled. He collapsed to the dais, blood seeping from his nose and ears, where the disharmonic energy had ruptured delicate capillaries. Without thinking, Seraphine abandoned the ritual position, dropping to her knees beside him. She cradled his head, heedless of the blood that stained her immaculate ceremonial robes. "Marcus," she whispered, genuine tears filling her eyes. "Why?" His lips moved, forming words she could barely hear. "Worth protecting. You. The future. Both our peoples." The realization struck her with the force of revelation. This human, this man she had been taught to consider unclean, inferior, had willingly sacrificed himself to protect her, to preserve the possibility of harmony between their species. There was no greater purity than such selflessness, no higher harmony than giving oneself for others. All around them, chaos erupted. Security forces subdued Lady Arian, but the damage was done. The disrupted ritual had created waves of disharmony that rippled through the hall, causing distress and confusion among both Virans and humans. Seraphine looked up, seeing her father's face tight with concern. High Harmonizer Celix moving toward them with healing crystals already in hand. The human delegation pushing forward in alarm for their fallen envoy. In that moment, something shifted within her. All her life, she had been taught that harmony came from purity, from isolation, from maintaining ancient patterns unchanged. Yet the strongest resonance she had ever experienced had been with this man who came from a world of soil and water, whose very difference from her had created something new and powerful. Still cradling Marcus, she rose to her feet, her voice ringing through the hall with unexpected power. "Enough!" The single word, infused with harmonic energy, brought an instant hush to the chaotic chamber. All eyes turned to her, the princess, kneeling on the sacred dais, her perfect robes stained with human blood, defying every protocol of her position. "Look upon this man," she commanded, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. "See what true harmony means. Not isolation, not purity of bloodline, but the willingness to give of oneself for others, to bridge differences rather than fear them." She reached out one hand to the heart crystal, which still hovered above its pedestal, its light now dimmed to a faint pulse. "Our peoples are not meant to remain separate. The very fields that sustain us cry out for renewal, for the revitalization that comes only from new patterns, new harmonies." As she spoke, something extraordinary began to happen. The heart crystal's light, which had dimmed during the attack, began to pulse stronger, responding to the passion and conviction in her voice. But now, instead of violet, it glowed with a pure white light that contained all colors within it. Celix reached them, kneeling beside Marcus with his healing crystals. "He lives," the ancient harmonizer confirmed, "but his energy patterns are severely disrupted. The disharmonic beam was meant for the crystal. No human body should have been able to withstand it." "Yet he did," Seraphine said, a fierce pride in her voice. "Help him, Celix, please." As the High Harmonizer worked to stabilize Marcus's condition, Seraphine turned to face the assembled court, still holding Marcus's blood-stained hand in hers. "Today, we witnessed an attempt to preserve the old ways through violence and fear, and we witnessed the answer to such fear: courage, sacrifice, and the recognition that true harmony comes not from sameness, but from complementary difference." The heart crystal's white light expanded, washing over the dais in waves that carried her words to every heart in the hall. I stand before you transformed by this truth. No longer will I accept teachings based on prejudice rather than understanding. No longer will I see humans, or any people different from ourselves, as unworthy or unclean. She looked down at Marcus, whose breathing had steadied under Celix's ministrations, though he remained unconscious. This man has shown me the true meaning of purity, not the absence of soil, but the presence of compassion, not isolation from difference, but embrace of it. The celestial sovereign stepped forward, his ageless face showing an emotion Seraphine had rarely seen: uncertainty. Daughter, the ritual has been disrupted. The alliance will be stronger for this trial, Seraphine interrupted, surprising everyone, including herself, with her boldness. Father, the old ways are failing us. The harmony fields fade not because of contamination, but because of stagnation. We need new energies, new patterns. She gestured to the heart crystal, now pulsing with brilliant white light. Look, the crystal responds not to perfect ritualistic form, but to genuine connection. This is the future of VR Prime, not isolation but integration, not fear but understanding. A murmur ran through the crowd, uncertainty, consideration, and from some quarters, dawning hope. The human delegation, in particular, watched with growing optimism as their unconscious envoy was tended by the High Harmonizer himself, while the Princess of VR Prime publicly declared a revolutionary new perspective. Beneath her hand, Marcus stirred, his eyes fluttered open, focusing with effort on her face. Seraphine, he whispered, his voice weak but steady. I'm here, she replied, squeezing his hand gently. You were very foolish and very brave. A faint smile touched his lips. Did it work, the ritual? Not as planned, she admitted, but perhaps better than we could have imagined. She helped him to sit up, supporting his weight against her shoulder, another breach of protocol that she embraced without hesitation. Together, they faced the assembled court, their joined hands raised in a gesture of defiance and hope. And above them, the heart crystal blazed with white light that shot upward through the crystal ceiling of the hall, connecting directly to the harmony fields below. The purple glow that had defined the fields for millennia began to shift, threads of blue light interweaving with the traditional violet, creating new patterns, new harmonies that spread across the planetary surface, like ripples in a cosmic pond. Look, Celix breathed, his ancient eyes wide with wonder. The fields respond to your union. This is unprecedented. The celestial sovereign stepped forward, studying the phenomenon with careful consideration. After a long moment, he turned to address the hall. The cosmic energies have spoken. This alliance, though tested by fire, appears to have their blessing. He looked at Seraphine and Marcus, still supporting each other on the dais. The ceremony will be completed, but not today. Let the envoy recover his strength. Let cooler heads prevail among those who oppose this union. His gaze moved pointedly to where Lady Arian was being restrained by security forces. In 3 days' time, we will reconvene to formalize what the harmony fields have already recognized. With that declaration, the formal ceremony was adjourned. As the crowd dispersed, some elated, some confused, some openly hostile, Seraphine remained at Marcus's side, unwilling to leave him even as medical attendants arrived to transport him to the healing chambers. You will recover fully, she assured him, as they prepared to move him. Viren healing techniques are quite advanced, particularly for injuries of an energetic nature. I'm more concerned about you, Marcus said, his voice stronger now that the initial shock had passed. What you did, defying tradition, challenging your father before the entire court, there will be consequences. Let there be, Seraphine said with a newfound certainty. Some traditions deserve to be challenged. Some changes are worth the cost. Their eyes met. And in that moment, No harmonic crystal was needed to facilitate the connection between them. Something had awakened in Seraphine, a recognition that true harmony came not from perfect adherence to ancient patterns, but from the courage to forge new ones. As Marcus was taken to the healing chambers, Seraphine found herself approached by High Harmonizer Celix. The ancient man's eyes held a mixture of concern and approval. "You have set in motion changes that cannot be undone, Princess," he said quietly. "There are many in the court who will resist with all their power." "I know," Seraphine acknowledged. "But you were right. Celix, personal feelings often have wisdom that duty cannot comprehend. What I feel when I'm with him, the harmony we create together, it's real. More real than all the teachings I've memorized about purity and cosmic order." "I believe you," Celix said, surprising her. "The response of the harmony fields confirms it. But be prepared for a difficult path ahead. Revolution, even one of understanding rather than violence, rarely comes without cost." The 3 days before the rescheduled ceremony were tumultuous. House Taurus, with Lady Arian temporarily confined to her quarters, rallied other conservative nobles to protest the continuation of the alliance. Meanwhile, more progressive houses, impressed by the visible rejuvenation of the harmony fields, threw their support behind the celestial sovereign's decision. Seraphine divided her time between political damage control and visits to Marcus in the healing chambers. His recovery progressed rapidly under Viren care, his natural resilience amplified by the harmonic treatments. By the second day, he was able to walk the healing gardens with her, their conversations ranging from diplomatic strategy to more personal matters. "Your people have remarkable medical techniques," Marcus observed as they sat beside a crystalline fountain whose waters flowed in precise, harmonic patterns. "On Earth, injuries like mine would have required weeks of recovery. The principle is simple. Once you understand it," Seraphine explained, "all living things have natural harmonic patterns. Injury disrupts these patterns. Our healing techniques simply help the body remember its proper resonance." "Like the attunement we performed with the heart crystal," Marcus suggested. "Precisely, though on a much smaller scale." Seraphine hesitated, then added, "Speaking of the heart crystal, it has continued to emit that white light since the disrupted ceremony. Celix says it's unprecedented. The crystal has fundamentally transformed." "As have you," Marcus said gently. "The princess who greeted me with such disdain just days ago would never have knelt on a sacred dais to cradle a bleeding human." Seraphine looked down at her hands, remembering the warmth of his blood on her fingers. "I've been thinking about dirt," she said unexpectedly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A fascinating topic of contemplation." A smile touched her lips at his dry humor. "I mean, I've been thinking about why we Virens fear it so deeply. We call it contamination. But what is soil really? It's the foundation of life on countless worlds. It nurtures, it transforms, it connects all living things in an endless cycle of renewal." "A rather poetic view of mud," Marcus observed, though his eyes were warm with appreciation. "Perhaps that's what we've forgotten," Seraphine continued thoughtfully. "That true purity isn't about absence of connection, but about being part of something larger than ourselves. The harmony fields aren't weakening because of contamination from outside. They're weakening because we've isolated ourselves too completely." Marcus reached out, hesitating just before touching her hand. "May I?" The fact that he asked, that he respected her boundaries despite all they had shared, touched her deeply. She nodded, turning her palm upward to meet his. As their fingers interlaced, the now familiar resonance hummed between them, comforting rather than overwhelming. "This connection between us," Marcus said quietly, "it defies everything both our peoples believed was possible. What does that tell us about other beliefs we've held as absolute? That the universe is more complex and beautiful than our limited understanding can encompass," Seraphine replied, "and that perhaps the greatest wisdom lies in remaining open to new harmonies, rather than clinging to familiar ones. They sat in companionable silence, hands joined, watching the crystalline waters flow in their precise patterns. Yet, Seraphine found her attention drawn not to the mathematical perfection of the fountain, but to the occasional irregularity, the places where the water's natural properties created unexpected eddies and swirls within the designed flow. Those imperfections, she realized, were what made the fountain truly beautiful. The day of the rescheduled ceremony arrived with an atmosphere of tense anticipation throughout the floating city. Security had been doubled, with special attention to screening all attendees for unauthorized devices. House tourist representatives were permitted to attend, but were seated far from the central dais and surrounded by loyal guards. In her chambers, as attendants prepared her for the ceremony, Seraphine made an unprecedented request. "I wish to wear this," she said, producing a simple silver pendant on a chain, a gift Marcus had given her the previous day. A small earth stone polished to reveal bands of color that reminded him, he'd said, of the harmony fields. Her chief attendant looked scandalized. "Your Highness, it is not made of Viren crystal. It would disrupt the symmetry of your ceremonial attire." "Nevertheless, I will wear it," Seraphine said with quiet firmness. "Some disruptions lead to greater harmony." The attendant reluctantly complied, securing the pendant around Seraphine's neck, where it rested against her skin, beneath the elaborate outer robes. Its presence, though hidden from view, gave her a sense of grounding she hadn't realized she needed. When she entered the Great Hall this time, the atmosphere was markedly different. The crowd seemed divided, some faces openly hostile, others curious, and a growing number openly supportive. The human delegation, their numbers increased since the first ceremony, watched with cautious optimism. And at the center of the dais stood Marcus, fully recovered. His formal attire modified to incorporate elements of Viren design while remaining distinctly human. Their eyes met across the hall, and even at this distance, she felt the connection between them pulse in recognition. As they took their positions, the celestial sovereign addressed the assembly. 3 days ago, we witnessed both the darkest and brightest possibilities of our future. Today, we choose which path to follow: fear or understanding, isolation or connection. He gestured, and attendants brought forth the heart crystal, still radiating its transformed white light. The cosmic energies have spoken through this crystal, showing us a new harmony that encompasses both our peoples. Let us heed their wisdom. The ceremony proceeded, following the traditional forms, but with subtle modifications that acknowledged the unprecedented nature of this union. When the time came for the bioenergetic harmonization, Seraphine and Marcus joined hands around the crystal without hesitation, their energies flowing together with a synchronicity that felt as natural as breathing. The heart crystal's white light expanded, washing over the assembled crowd in waves of harmonic energy. This time, there was no disruption, no discord, only the growing resonance between human and Viren energies, creating patterns of connection that spread beyond the hall to the harmony fields below. Through their joined hands, Seraphine sensed Marcus's joy, his wonder at what they were creating together, and beneath it, growing stronger with each pulse of the crystal, that warmer, more personal feeling that she now recognized as genuine affection, perhaps even the beginning of love. Her own emotions answered his, weaving into their shared resonance a thread of possibility that went beyond diplomatic alliance to something far more personal. The heart crystal responded, its light intensifying until it seemed to fill the entire hall with radiance. When the culmination was reached, the celestial sovereign stepped forward to pronounce the alliance official. But before he could speak the traditional words, Seraphine made another unprecedented choice. Still holding Marcus's hands, she turned to face the assembly. Today marks not merely an alliance between our worlds, but a recognition that the boundaries we have drawn between us were always illusions, human or Vieran. We are all part of the same cosmic harmony, each contributing our unique resonance to the greater whole. She looked at Marcus, drawing strength from the steady support in his eyes. I stand before you transformed by this truth. The prejudices I once held, the fear of difference, the belief in some inherent superiority of my people, have been washed away by the simple reality of connection. Her voice carried throughout the hall, infused with harmonic energy that made her words resonate in every heart present. Let this alliance be more than diplomatic convenience. Let it be the beginning of genuine understanding between our peoples. Let it teach us that true harmony comes not from sameness, but from the beautiful complexity of difference working in concert. The heart crystal pulsed in time with her words, its light now extending beyond the hall, visible through the crystal ceiling as a column of radiance that connected directly to the harmony fields. And there, visible to all, the fields began to change, threads of blue interweaving with the traditional purple, creating new patterns that spread across the planetary surface in waves of revitalized energy. Behold, the celestial sovereign said, his voice filled with wonder. The fields respond as they have not done in generations. This is the renewal our world has needed. He turned to Seraphine and Marcus, still joined by their clasped hands around the crystal. By the authority vested in me as celestial sovereign of VR Prime, I declare this alliance sealed in the sight of the cosmic harmonies. May the understanding begun here spread throughout our worlds. A cheer rose from the human delegation, quickly joined by the progressive Vieran houses. Even some who had been skeptical seemed moved by the visible evidence of the harmony field's revitalization. As the formal ceremony concluded and the attendees began to disperse for the celebration to follow, Marcus leaned close to Seraphine. You continue to surprise me, Princess. That speech was not in the traditional script. Some traditions, she replied with a smile, are meant to evolve, as are some princesses. His answering smile warmed her in ways that had nothing to do with harmonic energy, and everything to do with the very human connection growing between them. I look forward to witnessing that evolution, if you're willing to allow a human the privilege. Seraphine glanced around at the dispersing crowd, at her father, deep in conversation with human diplomats, at Celix watching them with knowing approval in his ancient eyes. Then, she made one more unprecedented choice. Taking Marcus's hand, she led him not toward the formal reception, but toward a side exit that would take them to the private royal gardens. I think, she said with newfound boldness, that we have fulfilled our ceremonial duties for today. Perhaps we might find our own harmony for a while. His surprised delight was answer enough as they slipped away from protocol and ceremony to the gardens where they had first begun to see each other as individuals rather than representatives of their species. There, beneath the open sky, with the revitalized harmony fields glowing below and three suns beginning their evening alignment above, they found themselves standing on one of the floating terraces. The whole world spread out before them. It's strange, Marcus said, looking out at the vista. A week ago, I saw this same view and felt like an outsider, a temporary visitor to a world that would never truly accept me. And now? Seraphine asked softly. He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the glow of the harmony fields. Now, I feel like I've found a place where I belong. Not because it's like Earth, but because it's where you are. The simple honesty of his words touched her deeply. Without the constraints of ritual or the watching eyes of the court, Seraphine allowed herself to step closer to him, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. When I first met you, she confessed, I could only see what I'd been taught to see, a human, unclean, unworthy. But now, he prompted gently when she hesitated. Now I see you, Marcus, a man of courage and compassion, whose difference from me creates not discord, but the most beautiful harmony I've ever known. She reached up, touching his face with fingers that no longer shied away from human contact. You took a disharmonic beam meant for me. You risked everything to protect not just the ceremony, but me personally. Why? His hand covered hers, pressing her palm more firmly against his cheek. Because in those few days of working with you, of experiencing the resonance between us, I came to care for you as more than a diplomatic partner. Your determination, your struggle to reconcile duty with growing understanding, your fundamental kindness beneath the formal exterior, all of it called to something in me I didn't know was waiting to be awakened. The vulnerability in his admission matched her own feelings so perfectly that Seraphine felt the last of her reserves crumbling. I feel it too, she whispered. This connection between us that goes beyond cosmic harmonies to something human. Human, Marcus repeated with a smile. Once, you would have considered that a flaw. And now I consider it the most precious gift, she replied. To feel, to connect, to reach beyond the boundaries of tradition and find something new and beautiful. As the three suns aligned in their perfect convergence, casting multiple shadows that blended into a single silhouette behind them, Seraphine made her final, unprecedented choice of the day. Standing on tiptoe, she leaned forward and pressed her lips gently against Marcus's in a kiss that bridged worlds. The contact sent a surge of harmonic energy coursing through them both. Not the formal resonance of ritual, but something wilder, more primal, yet no less harmonious. It was connection in its purest form, two different beings finding perfect understanding in each other's arms. When they finally drew apart, breathless and wondering, the sky above them had changed. The harmony fields, responding to their genuine connection, had sent tendrils of energy upward to form an aurora that danced across the heavens. Violet and blue intertwining to create patterns of light never before seen on VR Prime. Look, Marcus whispered, his arm around her waist as they gazed upward. We did that. Not through ceremony or ritual, Seraphine added in wonder, but through simply being honest with each other. They stood together, watching the cosmic display that symbolized everything their union promised, not just for themselves, but for their peoples. New patterns, new possibilities, new harmonies born from the courage to embrace difference rather than fear it. What happens now? Marcus asked softly. The diplomatic mission has been accomplished, but he didn't need to complete the thought. They both knew the question that hung between them. Was what they had found together limited to this diplomatic moment? Or could it grow into something more lasting? Seraphine turned to face him fully. Her decision already made in the moment she had first cradled his wounded body on the ceremonial dais. Now, we build on what we've begun. The alliance between our peoples is just the beginning. There is so much more for us to discover together. Together, Marcus repeated, the word carrying all the promise of future days. I like the sound of that. As night fell fully over VR Prime, the aurora of their creation continued to dance across the sky, visible to every inhabitant of the floating city, a testament to the power of connection across difference, and a promise of the new harmonies yet to be discovered when hearts remain open to possibility. In the cosmic pattern that spread across the heavens, those with eyes to see could discern a new truth taking shape, that the universe's greatest music comes not from isolated notes played in perfect uniformity, but from diverse voices joining in a chorus that honors both their uniqueness and their fundamental connection. And at the center of this new pattern stood Seraphine and Marcus, once divided by prejudice and fear, now united by a harmony that transcended all boundaries, the harmony of two hearts that had found in each other not contamination, but completion.